monde, c'est nous.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of African Media. Thank you, African Media. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.
It is not very certain whether Libya will be able to hold elections in the shortest time possible as the political atmosphere in the North African state continues to deteriorate, with rival leaders at loggerheads over the election criteria. Two senior officials from the country's rival camps have failed to reach an agreement on a constitutional framework for national elections following 2 days of United Nations mediated talks in Geneva, Switzerland. The talks between the House of Representatives and the Higher State Council legislative bodies were aimed at agreeing a constitutional basis and interim arrangements for elections that were originally scheduled for December 2021. According to the United Nations Special Advisor on Libya, Stephanie Williams, the Speaker of the country's East-based Parliament, Aguila Saleh, and Khaled Al-Mishri, head of the government Supreme Council of State, based in the West in the capital Tripoli, could not reach an agreement on the eligibility criteria for presidential nominees. The talks in Geneva were the latest in UN-led efforts to bridge the gaps between the factions after the last round of talks in the Egyptian capital of Cairo failed to make headway. Reports from the country's local media indicate that requirements for presidential candidacy have been the most contentious point in all previous rounds of talks. The Tripoli-based council insists on banning military personnel as well as dual citizens from running for the country's top post, apparently a move directed at Commander Khalifa Haftar, a U.S. citizen whose forces are loyal to the East-based administration. Many Libyans now fear that a failure to chart a way forward for elections and resolve an existing dispute about control of an interim government will push the country back towards a territorial division or conflict. Since the planned December election was abandoned, Libya's rival factions have moved to a standoff over control of government with both sides backed by different armed forces. The House of Representatives in March appointed Fathi Bashaga to take over as Prime Minister, but Abdul Hamid Al-Dbiba, who was installed in the role through a UN-backed process last year, has refused to step down. The rivalry has sparked fears the oil-rich country could slide back to fighting after tentative steps toward unity last year. Libya has been in chaos since a NATO-backed uprising toppled and killed a long-time leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. What future then lies ahead for a country with divisive administrations whose leaders are not ready to make any compromises? Stay with us. This is Views on the Continent.
Afrique Media, le monde, c'est nous.
It is always a pleasure to know you're watching Africa Media. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this other edition of Views on the Continent, where we take a look at the issues on the continent, problems that are plaguing the continent, and how we can find possible solutions to these problems. And today, our focus is on Libya, that is seeking to hold elections in the shortest time possible. However, leaders from two rival camps in the country, rival administrations, are yet to agree whether these elections will actually take place or not. Now, the bone of contention is the election criteria. Latest talks brokered by the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, ended without a leeway. And now, what are the stakes for Libya? What lies ahead for a country where the leaders of two rival administrations are not able to meet on a common ground for the country to to thrive. Now it should be recorded that Libya has been in chaos since 2011 when strongman Muammar Gaddafi was killed in a NATO backed attack on the North African state. Now we are focusing on Libya. I would like to know from you what you think needs to be done for Libya to move forward for elections to take place. Now elections in that part of Africa were normally supposed to take place in December 2021. However, that was postponed due to some irregularities, due to some a myriad of issues that are yet to be resolved. What future lies ahead for Libya? So that's going to be a point of discussion this day on the program. And if you're joining us for the very first time, this is an interactive program where you can always call and have your say on the day's topic or any other issue that is affecting the continent at this point in time. And of course, we also have some resource person with us today, to take a look at what is happening in Libya, and that's in the person of Mr. Andrin Atam Ebako, who is joining us from Cameroon via Zoom. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program this day.
Thank you very much, Madam Florencia, and wonderful to all the participants who are watching this program at this very hour. I hope my audio is very clear, loud and clear. Is it okay? Is my sound system all right?
Clearly. All right, thanks for honoring our invitation this day. Okay, diving straight away into our subject matter of the day, taking a look at Libya. Libya has been in turmoil for quite some time now, ever since Muammar Gaddafi was killed in a NATO-backed attack on the country. The country has been in turmoil. We have had several rival governments, and today that problem is still continuing, and they are talking of elections to take place in this year 2022. Do you see Libya holding Libya ready for elections anytime soon?
Well, I'm glad you first admitted that Libya had been in peace while Muammar Gaddafi was alive and ruling Libya. And as a matter of fact, Libya was better off with Muammar Gaddafi living in Libya, because the Libyans were living as well very good and had no insecurities and had no challenge with life issues. As a matter of fact, statistics have shown that the life standard of the Libyans have drastically deteriorated to a point where it is a growing concern. So when you look at this analysis, you begin to wonder whether we want a change, we want growth, we want unity, or do we want to defend democracy? That becomes a challenge today in Africa that we are seeing, because it seems as if democracy today has become more important than the lives of our people, than the lives of the African people. Because if the nation is not a democratic nation, it is not a legitimate nation or government as far as the UN is concerned. So I really wonder whether the agenda of the UN is to push in a system which does not conform to the African people and does not seek the unity of the African people, or do they really want to see Africa do well? That has become the challenge, because if you ask what happened that NATO had to break an existing charter at the level of the UN United Nations to invade Libya and remove what they call a long-term leader. What do they apply by long-term leader? It doesn't matter how long you are in power or how short you are in power, but it is what you are able to do for your nation, which stands as a legacy and as a roadmap for others to continue in that legacy in order to build unity, improve the life standard of your people, and make the world become a better place, conducive for all human beings. That's what leadership is all about. Leadership is not about building a system which secures the interests of a few people at the detriment of the masses. That is what democracy is showing us today in Africa, because it's not giving us the concern of the Libyans whose lives are being deteriorated. All these insecurities we are talking today in Libya, all this growing conflict of parties not coming together, it's only when democracy is mentioned. Whatever begins by dividing the people can never be in the interest of the people. Democracy is only a direct rule of the West over Africa and makes the West become the highest trade dealers in Africa, which the economy of Africa, as a matter of fact, is heavily exploited by the West, and the African people do not get, not because Africans are poor, but because democracy comes to build in puppet leaders, puppet government, which seems to have control over the masses, where the masses do not have access to their own resources in order to develop their life, because it's in the hand of a state which has been keeping an existing business treaty, colonial pact agreements in order for you to keep your party floating, in order for you to be a president. It is only in democracy where we have seen where criminals have been crowned presidents, clowns have been crowned presidents who are practicing witchcraft in the name of leadership, which does not seek the interests of the African people. So what we are finding today in Libya is the same thing, same struggle in Sudan, same struggle in Mali, same struggle in Ethiopia, same struggle all over Africa. Democracy has been very destructive to Africa, and as a matter of fact has brought in a lot of insecurities in Africa, even as we are speaking. So democracy is not a model to solve the African problem. We are talking of a queen in England who has been for 70 years on seat. And you are talking of Muammar Gaddafi, who led Libya for 31 years or 42 years and made Libya became a paradise in Africa, made Libya became an example to all the nations of the world and a system of leadership that governments of the world should practice. Why did they kill Muammar Gaddafi? You go and do a statistics in the United States, you have close to 1 million poor persons in America, homeless persons in America. You go to France, you have about 7 poor million people, 144,000 homeless people. In Libya, there was no homeless Libya. There was no Libyan who had not a house. All Libyans got homes. All Libyans had what to eat. All Libyans had salary. All Libyans had a future. They had free medical access to medical facility. They had free education. As a matter of fact, all the oil that was sold in Libya, each Libyan had a stipend. They had a profit from the oil that was sold in Libya. Today, where is Libya? So what are we fighting to defend in Africa? Is it that we want to embrace democracy? Is it that democracy has now become more important than the lives of the Libyans? This is the question we should be asking, and not whether Libyans should go for election. When Libya was doing well, there was no need for election. Elections only come in when there have been insecurity, when there have been poverty, when there have been war, when there have been starvation, when there have been problems, where democracy now comes to give the people a need to go and vote a leader who is going to solve them that problem, which does not address the core of the problem. The core of the problem in Libya is a system which the West is imposing in Libya to have a democratic government. Why is it that a nation cannot use its own system as long as it benefits and improves the life standard of its own people? The UN calls it an illegitimate government. When they talk about a long-term government, the president of Singapore used 31 years to build Singapore in what it is today. Dubai, the same thing. You had leaders who have vision. You cannot expect democracy to bring us rotational presidents where this one comes in and wants to do something right, this other one comes and takes the nation back, like what we saw in Zimbabwe, what we are seeing today in Tanzania. This is what democracy is doing to us. Keep bringing us back colonial rule over Africa and allowing the West to impose their will and exploit Africa, as a matter of fact, where Africans themselves cannot invest in Africa because the governments are not governments which are created by the African. We cannot build Africa using foreign systems. Let democracy be for America. Africa is underdeveloped. Africa is at war. We have a lot of insecurities in Africa which require Africans to come together in order to be the solution to their own problem. And not in this period of insecurity, we are asking the West which government or which elections to take place in Libya, to put what kind of president in Libya which is better than Muammar Gaddafi. I want to know, all these African presidents who are democratically elected, which one is more than Muammar Gaddafi? None. So what do we want in Africa? Is it to crown clowns on the pulpit in the name of presidents? Or is it to put in real leaders who know what is good for their people? They bring us developments in Africa which the Africans cannot afford those developments. This is not the kind of Africa we want. We want an Africa which will open unionism and build systems that can call back our diaspora. The agenda of democracy in Africa is to keep the diaspora away from Africa and keep Africa in these divided ranks where Africans are fighting against Africans and make the West become the only breadwinner, the only winner in Africa, and the only friend to Africa, because Africans are here protecting and defending their identities against themselves, building militaries against the same African people, building laws and policies against the same African people. And who are the beneficiaries of this? Is still the Europeans. We cannot allow democracy rule Africa. We cannot allow democracy to be the system of how Africa is going to live or build its economy or develop. Democracy has never developed any African nation. This is 60 to 70 years. We are on the same road, partnership with the Europeans, with the Americans. What development has Europe or America done to Africa compared to what Mohammed Gaddafi alone, as one man in Libya, did to the whole of Africa? Monies that Mohammed Gaddafi donated to the African Union, to the African member states, to build a satellite so that African calls do not need to go through Europe and come to Africa, where they are being monitored by the West to know who is calling who and how Africa is doing. Mohammed Gaddafi, the same Mohammed Gaddafi, was going to build an African Development Bank to put in $70 billion so that Africa can have its own monetary fund. They can be proud to have their own currency, which they themselves can decide their own value. We have presidents who are still defending colonial currencies in Africa, still depending on the IMF, the World Bank, a nation of a leader who derived from a political party, a party out of hundreds of other parties in a nation, goes to the IMF and borrows a money which is in the pocket of its own private citizen, which is in the pocket of its own African people, only because he wants to indebt a nation before he leaves power. He leaves power, another president comes in and they impute a debt on an individual who came from a political party to be on the head of all Africans. This is not what we want. We cannot allow the decision of one man become the decision of everybody without taking opinion and asking their own position to what they decide as to and a collective agreement of what we want to do in Africa. I still repeat, Africa is not for the UN. Africa is not for the Europeans. Africa is not for this African president. Africa is for Africans. And all Africans at this point needs to rise up and understand that if we do not rescue Africa by coming together and push away this agenda of building us weapons, witches and wizards who come in the name of presidents to come and kill their people, sell their people at the level of the UN as if we are slaves. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ibako, now talking about the United Nations intervening or interfering in most African nations and their crisis. Now, this brings me to the next question. Now, this talks about holding elections that were normally supposed to take place in December 2021. These talks are being brokered by the United Nations. Do you think this is posing a problem as to why Libya and the Libyan leaders have not been able to reach an agreement for elections, if that's what Libya really needs at this point in time? And do you think if these talks were brokered or were led by Libyans themselves, there would have some progress would have been made?
The argument here in Libya was the same in the days of Charles Taylor in Liberia, where the Americans will always want somebody who is going to rule Libya, who is in good terms with the Americans and the Europeans. That is a struggle. If you allow the Libyans themselves to rule Libya, they will rule Libya in their own interest. So you cannot suggest others who do not have in mind and in heart the concern of the masses to lead Libya. And as a matter of fact, why do we get into this position of disagreement? That is what democracy brings. It brings division. It doesn't seek for unity. This is not a football team. It's not Chelsea or Barcelona. This is about the lives and the destinies and the properties of the African people, which are wanting to be exploited by the Europeans in order to build their own empire and consider Africa to be a third world nation, when yet Africa is a very rich and the most richest continent in the whole world. Why are they painting all these pictures when yet this is where they are building their economy? This is where they are building their own society. This is how they are developing the West by what they exploit from Africa. Africa is damn rich. But why is it that the masses of their people are not living a comfortable life? This is the agenda of the 1884. We have read the Treaty of Berlin Conference 1884, and we understand that they have the agenda for divide and conquer in order to possess the wealth of Africa. When you talk about the Commonwealth, it simply means all wealth belongs to the British people, to the Europeans. That's just about the Commonwealth. It's all about dominions, principalities, authority, slave owners, people who only feeds and breeds from exploiting innocent victims. This is all this organization, whether it's the UN, it's the Commonwealth, they all the same. They have no interest to develop Africa. Why must it take too long? Why do we need elections to develop Africa? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Why do we need people to agree? Two parties, two opposition parties, you are expecting them to agree. The Libyans themselves are saying that they don't want dual nationality leaders to become part of this election process. They want they themselves to be able to lead their nation. What is the challenge? Why must it that in order for you to appoint a leader, you need to create political parties? Why must it always be that the people need to first disagree, divide, fight, kill themselves in order to keep getting elections? Bringing in the same old people who keep making promises of solving problems which they are the one creating those problems. This is what politics, democracy, elections have brought to us today in Africa. They have done it intentionally to create needs for the African people to always find a need to go out and vote. But they fail to understand the people who are creating these needs. The people who are creating this need are the people who are defending democracy. Because without these needs, people like Buhari will never be in power. People like Nana Addo will never be in power. People like so many of these leaders will never be in power because why? They do not have the desire, the will for their people. They are there for their party interests, they are there for their personal interests, and they are there for the interests of the colonialists. These elections are decided right at the level of the UN National Security Council of which government is going to be in Libya. So it is up to the Libyans to rise up and say, this is not how we used to live in the days of Muammar Gaddafi. The life Gaddafi gave to Libyans, Americans could not live that kind of a life. Europeans could not live that kind of a life. And they saw that Muammar Gaddafi was not only a leader of Libya, but he was a leader who seek the unity of the African people. To the extent where he was to open a Caribbean development bank for all the diasporas in the Caribbean, where they could go and borrow money without borrowing money from the IMF and the World Bank. That is what has left Jamaica today debt slave. These are their strategies. Building in puppet governments to indebt Africans from one generation to another, when yet Africa is rich. Looting out the resources of Africa, illicit cash going out of Africa every blessed day. Resources leaving Africa without paying taxes. America wants the good for Africa. United Nations wants the good for Africa. Europeans want the good for Africa. These are all propaganda. But they run companies say they don't pay taxes. Dividends go back to their country. GDPs of tax erosion alone of all these multinational companies in Africa goes up to 20% GDP annually. This money alone is enough to make all Africans rich. What is the challenge we're having today in Africa? It comes back to leadership. You go back to the external dynamics. You come to the internal dynamics. The external dynamics is what that influences the internal dynamics where we have bad leadership in Africa. And this is going to take the masses of the African people to rise up everywhere, whether you are home or in the diaspora. It is a time where we all need to rise up and break this system. Russia is taking a good turn. China is taking a good turn. This is a time where Africa needs to follow Russia behind and resist this demonic system of democracy which these people are pushing to Africa. It's not ever going to help us because they are not here for the Africans. They are here for their own interests and they know it so well, and that is the simple truth. Today, they ban Africans from not going to Europe. They ban Africans from not traveling to America. But here, all of their governments are in Africa, looting. When they finish building the empires using Africans, and the Africans want to enjoy that life, they push them away as if they are people who got no destiny, when yet they have transferred and reversed their destinies to the West. So we need to end this madness of democracy. Democracy will never work in Africa if it did not work in America. America had already built an empire before they brought in democracy. Europe had already built in an empire before they brought in democracy. In the days of Hitler, 1933, he abolished all political parties, closed the office of a president, and declared himself a dictator. Africa is underdeveloped. The kind of leaders we need in Africa are not people like Nana Addo, not people like Buhari. We need people like Muammar Gaddafi, Thomas Sankara, Assimi Goïta. These are the kind of leaders Africa needs. People who are ready to unite Africa and not those that are ready to divide Africa in the name of political parties. We need to end this nonsense. Democracy is not going to work for Africa, and we are not going to sit down as Africans and watch Africa being destroyed at the detriment of our own future and the future of the coming generation. This is not going to happen in North Africa, and that's why we have vowed that this generation, the imperialists, will not survive our generation in Africa. So all these leaders they are dealing with, in Africa, Africa does not belong to them. It belongs to the African people. And so we are going to rise up, even if it's going to take us go on the streets to defend our sovereignty, defend our integrity, to restore the name of the honor of our founding fathers. We are going to do that because we have that obligation. To those that the obligation has been given, like the president, all the democratically elected president, they have been able to do nothing. So it is up to us to assume that we are the solution of the problems that are all imported, created by the West. I remember in the early 2000s, there was a lot of insecurities in Europe, in America. Today, all that insecurity is in Africa. Who is making the money? Europeans are making the money. Africans are buying weapons every day, building military bases every day. Who are they building to fight with? All those military bases are building to fight who? To kill your own people? Africa today, guns everywhere. How can a small nation of a population of 5 million people, we are talking of Central Africa, 80% of that population is in the military, 20% are civilians. So 80% of a population of 5 million people are armed with weapons to kill who? Is it to kill the Europeans? The answer is no. It's to kill their own fellow Africans. We cannot go down this road of democracy. It is building us very repressive governments in the name of democracy. Government who don't take advice and who don't work with their people. Government who do not have connections and collaboration with their people. This is what we are talking today in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ebaku. If you're just joining us, this is Views on the Continent, and we are talking about Libya, where talks have failed once again between rival administrations as to a way forward to holding elections in a country that is being rocked by violence and other political issues, and the country has slated December 2021 to hold elections. But the question we are asking today is if Libya is actually ready for elections, and what is going to be the outcome of a country where two divisive administrations are at loggerheads to arrive at a decision of holding elections, if that's what is going to solve Libya's problems. So our numbers are on the screen. You can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic, about the current situation in Libya and what the way forward for the North African country is going to be. So you can always call us and tell us what you think. Now, Mr. Atem Ebaku, when you take a look at Libya, and from every indication, the country is not very ready for elections, given that the country is being run by two different administrations and they are unable to arrive at a decision. What do you think needs to be done in Libya at this point in time to see the country come back to what it used to be, if not coming back to what it used to be, but for peace to at least reign in a country that has experienced peace in the past?
That's a very good question, Madame Florencia. Peace is not the absence of war. You can live in peace while the people do not have a peaceful life and the people do not have access to what they have in order to enjoy their life in their own nation. This is what we should be talking about. So if we want to change the system and expect to get a better result, it would be like a man who expects to do the same thing and expect a miracle to come out of it. It cannot work. If you want Libya to go back to what it used to be, you should allow the Libyans to lead themselves, and through the unity of the Libyan people, a leader is going to rise up who is going to meet the demands and the plights of the Libyans. But if you want to change the system and you are expecting Libya to go back to what it used to be, it's a very big mistake, because you're only going to create an artificial peace which is being imposed by repressive government, which imposes its will on the people, and because of the people's inability to either come together because of the divisive strategy of political parties, it's difficult for the people to come together. So if the people are, we understand these things. We live in Cameroon, we live in Sudan, we live in Mali, we live in Ethiopia, we live in Malawi, we live in Kenya, we live in Tanzania. We understand that there are Africans, Ghana, living in the peace which the West is talking about, but yet their lives are not improving. What satisfaction would it give a man to be in peace when he is in hell? That is another definition of insanity. There is no peace in democracy, and no peace. If in the period where elections have not even started, when 2011 NATO invaded Libya, a peaceful nation, peaceful not because it was quiet, but because all Libyans were living well. Now you are talking of peace, which the life standard of the Libyans have deteriorated. In other words, it's like you are putting a man in a cemetery and you say peace, perfect peace, when the man is dead. This is the peace which democracy is telling to us, to accept defeat and to accept being slaves and to allow ourselves to be controlled by systems which takes away our lands, because the secret of eroding the people's culture and identity is to take their lands. And then one of the easiest way to take their lands is to build in governments that are going to put policies which will never be in the interest of the people. Like we saw in Tanzania, the Maasai people were asked to evict them from their lands. Cultures, identity, tradition goes with a proximity of a geographic location. The people away from that location, you have killed that culture. And that is a system which democracy is doing. It only does the opposite. It takes a man and makes a man to become a woman. It takes a woman and makes a woman to become a man. He came to Africa and saw a continent. He broke it down into 54 pieces and called a leg a head, and took a hand and called it a head, and then take a thigh and call it a head, take a toe and he called it a head. Today it has created Africa as a monster. It did not end there. It came down to the individual nation. It has broken down. It began to form in different nations called political parties with heads that are very big, that cannot make decisions for their own, in the name of political head or political president. And these are the clowns and the criminals and the witches and wizards that have been created by democracy, not because they are witches and wizards by birth, but because they have allowed themselves to be transformed by a system which does not conform to the spirit of Africanism and the spirit of their founding fathers. We are not Europeans. When they were in 1884, there was no African there to sell Africa. When Africans used to say it was Africans that sold Africans. The simple definition of a slave can only be conquered in a battle to make one a slave. No goat will sell another goat to a group of hyenas, else he himself will become also a meat to those hyenas. So the West invaded Africa to conquer Africa, to divide us in order to rule us. That's why they have kept the diaspora away. Why don't we get our diaspora back coming? Why don't we have systems and policies in our government which allows diaspora to come back to Africa? We don't. You go to Ghana, to have citizenship as a diaspora is a serious problem. Why? Because the systems there are not systems that seek the unity of the people. It intends to keep the people apart in order to make the West become our best friend. This does not explain the fact that you have people who have enslaved us for so many years, close to 1,000 years, and today they become our best friend. It does not add up. It simply means that our leaders are being tied. They are entered into an occult society called the UN. When Mugabe was crying for the reform of the UN National Security Council, we are talking of a long-term stay President Mohammed Gaddafi. The UN has been in power since 1945. Nobody is complaining. The Queen of England, 70 years, nobody is complaining. Democracy is over 200 and something years. In the 1700s, it was brought in America. This is what they are bringing to 21st century Africa. The same democracy that was brought in by a dictator in America. Go to America today, the same America that was built by our people, they don't have rights. When gays, lesbians, bisexuals went to the street, they gave them rights. But our people do not have rights till today. Africa till today do not have veto seat at the UN National Security Council. We cannot use democracy in Africa. It is not a model for Sajefo Nkrumah of Ghana. It's not a model for Mohammed Gaddafi. It's not a model for Thomas Sankara. So we will not accept what does not come from our own identity, from our own culture and value. Thank you very much.
Mr. Temebako, our lines are open. You can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic, about the ongoing crisis in Libya, where rival leaders are unable to arrive at a decision to holding elections in the country, paving a way forward for elections. Now, their bone of contention is election criteria. Now, they are talking about some leaders that they don't want, or some candidates that they don't want to run for elections. They are talking of military personnel, talking about dual citizenship, and they don't want such candidates to go in for the elections. What does Libya need at this point in time? What is good for Libya, for the country to thrive, to at least have things going the normal way, rather than continuing in turmoil, in violence, and the common Libyans on the streets are the ones feeling the pain of all of these. So you can always call us and tell us what you think. We already have indications of our first caller on the line. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Particularly interfering affairs so far. So I look at it, the UN is actually... Hello, Laurencia and the panelists. I am Martin calling from Douala. Yes, Laurencia, you see, the UN so far for decades now has not really learned a lesson.
We seem to be getting a little technical issue there, getting through to that caller. If the
other continents have affairs so far. So I look at it, the UN is actually dodging. There's something very critical, very important that they are actually very dodging. They don't want to go to the root of the problem, which they actually know. We know that we are actually talking of a sovereign state that was actually infiltrated by people who are not neighbors to that particular state, by people who really have nothing to do with it. We are talking at the time where we're supposed to be actually singing but justice and peace to return in that country. But so far, Sarkozy is still walking tall. Obama too is still walking tall. And I think too, Laurencia, it is actually time we start moving away with this kind of a narrative of international mediation and so on and so forth. You see, that's the major area whereby the UN is actually failing. They only come in for mediation. They don't do the prevention. When NATO was actually warming up to interfere in those countries' affairs so far, they did nothing so far. Then they came in with another mafia again called NATO. And the main aim of NATO, they say, was to reinforce what? Democracy. How can you create a military force, a dictatorial force to reinforce democracy? This is just a mafia. And this is just a pointer that democracy, what they call democracy, which is in quote so far, was not really an African thing so far. You see, they are just using it as a tool to see how they can actually enter and maneuver and do away with affairs and so on and so forth. You see, we are still talking that there's no peace, there's fighting going on, but oil is leaving Libya. Nothing is working in Libya apart from oil that is leaving there to the banks of Europe and other Western countries so far. So I think that the best way for them to be able to solve the problem in Libya, I've always said it time and again, there's still a son, Sahid Gaddafi, who is still actually living within the country. He can actually be given a chance maybe to head a transitional government that will unite and bring back all the Libyan people together. They say Gaddafi was a killer. If Gaddafi was killing his own people, let's put it that yes, let's say yes, he was killing his own people. He was killing only, let's say, only 1 million a year. The situation would have not gone worse than what we have today. It is actually a major position and a pointer to the African Union to start also raising eyes. And another thing to the beats my imagination, they are going to make peace talks in a different continent. Where is the African Union? They are just there, sitting quiet, folding their arms. Very soon you will see them moving up and down, eating our, carrying off away our allowances and so on, and seeking allowances and so on and so forth. it is actually a pity. And I think that the Libyan people themselves, following what the suffering that they have actually gone through for decades now, they have no other person who is actually assisting them in the world apart from themselves to start organizing themselves and start charting a way forward. All of those rival groups within the Libyan continent, they are actually groups that have alliances abroad. They are using them, the remote control. So far, look at the chaos that's actually happened to the rest of the world because of this issue of manipulation and interference in a sovereign state by Western countries so far. It is actually a pity, Emanuela, and I think that only the Libyan people can actually come together and they chart a new way for a new Libyan people. Once more, Emanuela, panelists, have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maurice Martin, calling us all the way from Douala, Cameroon. He says democracy is not a thing for Africa. Africa needs to look for another way to governing itself rather than going through a democracy. So we would also like to hear from you. You can call us and tell us what you think about the current state of affairs in Libya. What do you think needs to be done for Libya to for peace to be restored in Libya, or for things to go back to the way they used to be in the North African state? Our numbers are on the screen. You can always call us and tell us what you think. Now, coming back to you, Mr. Atame Bako, we just listened to the last caller, and he also said something about democracy, which you have been saying, and how other countries intervene in Africa's affairs. So, do you have any comments as to what the last caller just said?
Africa, and you know how Africa has been damaged and been heavily abused and affected by these systems, which have never ever met the needs of the African people, the very demands and the very needs and worries and plights for why they go out to elect government every day and every year. This is what we are talking about. It has not been able to do that. To assume the happiness of the Europeans at the detriment of the African people is like forcing poison for us to drink, knowing that we are going to die. That is exactly what democracy is to us today in Africa. It has built a handful of persons who are happy, and because they are happy, it is considered that democracy is intact. When the masses are suffering, democracy is not abused as long as they are legible members. Those democratically elected leaders who are keeping this system, defending these identities which were created in 1884, democracy is not abused. In the constitution of the Berlin Conference, or the Charter of the Berlin Conference, says that any nation which they choose to form is legitimate. Anyone which they did not form, whether it's in the interest of the people, is illegitimate. That is what they say, and that was the main reason why they removed Muammar Gaddafi. In terms of killing Libyans, what do you mean by that when there was no homeless Libyan? Nobody lived out of the streets. There was no poor person in Libya. There was nobody crying of hunger in Libya. So I don't know what, if it was a market where Muammar Gaddafi was going to kill Libyans every day. It was not the case. The standard of living in Libya was nothing comparable to any part of Africa or the West. Libya was a prototype of what Africa was supposed to be in order to rule the world. This is not the case. So democracy only sustains and maintains the agenda of the Berlin Conference forcefully today in Africa. Like I said before, the West is so wicked. They are very manipulative. They are deceit. The only thing they know how to do best is deceit. Any other thing which is moral and which is right is not in their nature. What are they forcing today in Africa? LGBT. What are they forcing today in Africa? They're taking away of the people's lands, identity, cultures, values, and traditions. What is the attack of democracy today in Africa? It's killing down the protectorates of our customs and our tradition. Chiefs today, kings today are all being sworn in the democratic process. So where is the value of the African people? Democracy does not come here to seek our value. It's not here for our interest. It's here to keep the interests of the Europeans at the detriment of the African people at all costs. Why? They need to make the government repressive in order to keep 85% of the African people in abject poverty. So they want to colonize Africa by using these governments that are absolutely controlling the few economy which is in the hands of these African leaders, which the masses don't get because the West uses this government to exploit Africa. So it is either you join the government and become part of that colonialism, or you find a way and run out of Africa to what I call voluntary slavery. You help them to go build on what they have taken from Africa. So in the either decision you take is detrimental to your own future, only because of the system and the structure which they have placed in Africa. We need to change this thing because it will never work. It's never ever going to work for us, because we've been down this road, we had a lot of experiences, and we can tell from those experiences that if we keep repeating the same thing and expect to get a different result, it's like a foolish man. So we need to change the system by going back to our founding father. We don't need to ask what should we do as Africans. We know we have learned a lot, not only from Nkrumah, not only from his emperor, his majesty, Selassie I of Ethiopia, not only from Thomas Sankara, Magufuli, Assimi Goïta, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. We've learned a lot that if Africa is ever going to survive, Africa will need to unite. Then we need to break down all these identities and begin to build what I call a common defense system, and a structure like the EWF, the Ethiopian World Federation, which stands for the interest of all black people, because we can't mention the AU. The AU was brought ever since after the fall of the 9/11 2001 bombing of the World Trade Center in America. The AU was hijacked. ECOWAS is also another body that is heavily being used by the Europeans in order to push in colonialism in Africa. We can't depend on such bodies which are defending what is killing the African people, and because it only makes few happy, and they consider the happiness of the few to become the happiness of the majority, when yet the people are plunging into abject poverty. We saw the other day in Morocco, Africans were being killed, Africans were being maltreated. Once a nation loses that touch or that tact to give value to the lives of its own citizens, no matter where you travel in this world, nobody will find you as value, because they want to judge how much value does your nation have for its own citizens. African leaders, African governments don't put value in the lives of their citizens because they don't see them as the means in order to build its social development and its economy. They use the resources, the natural resources, in exploiting and building political how will I call it, commotion, as if Africa is good. Africa can only be built by its human resources. And many of these human resources, we have them in the diaspora. You go to many of these African nations that are all democratical. The percentage of illiteracy is almost 90%. You tell me, how can you come out with a leader who is going to deal with a body that has been since 1884, 1945, 1923, 1930 as the Commonwealth? These are the people Africans are dealing with: demons, principalities, age-old rulers, wicked human beings. These are the people we are inviting to Africa to come and negotiate whether Libya should have elections or Libya should not have elections. Do Libya need election if Libyans were living well? That should be the question. Did Libya need elections before? The answer was no. Libya never needed elections. Why? Because they had somebody in power who was giving what their people needed. And when the West saw that paradise was being built in Africa, Africa was being restored by one man, Muhammad Gaddafi, they decided to kill that vision by using democracy. No African government went to the rescue of Muhammad Gaddafi. AU did not go for the rescue of Muhammad Gaddafi. ECOWAS, that is laying sanctions in Mali, did not go in for the rescue of Muhammad Gaddafi. This is Africa today. We have lost the African Development Bank with 70 billion from oil money from Libya was supposed to be in that monetary fund, so that Africans can have their own banks where they can borrow money with zero interest. How much is the interest? Do they take money from the IMF? 25%. But when the Europeans take money from the IMF and the World Bank, is 3%. This is what we are talking about. So how do we ever think that IMF, World Bank that was built in 1944 will serve Africa that was built, that was being born, birthed in 1960 by the West and put their DNA in Africa, which is democracy. It can never serve the interest of the African people. It can serve the interest of political parties. Heads of political parties who became president is going to serve their interest because they know the opposition and the struggle in which they have come from in order to win the presidential seat, not because they want to unite their people, but because they have made Africa to become like a war zone. Political parties are nations. How do you create 317 nations in a nation called Cameroon? There are 26 million persons. There are 317 political parties. So you have created 17 other nations in one nation with a population of 26 million people. These are the monsters they have been creating in Africa. So how do you expect a nation like that to be healthy when it's rich? The Chinese are there exploiting it. The Europeans are there exploiting it. The government which is in power is so weak because it cannot defend itself because it's dealing with a group and a block of hyenas. He knows if he makes one mistake, they will take him out like they did with the president of Chad, Idriss Déby. This is where they have left our African leaders, in fear, in terror, in nightmare, because they are standing as one man. Once you get up there at that level of the UN, it's like you have entered a secret society. You have no choice anymore for your people. You look at the vision you had before and what you are doing to your people is opposite. Democracy only reverses what is good. It does not promote the unity and the development and the success and the prosperity of humanity. It is to force white supremacy. It is to force the spirit of Antichrist over the world and allow human beings to be controlled like smartphones. They want us to be controlled like smart devices. We are human beings. We have brains. We have spirit. We have soul. We should be able to look and depend in ourselves and find solutions from ourselves. You cannot use artificial means to solve real-time problems and solve problems of human beings. We are not cars. You can build computers to fix cars, but you cannot build computers to fix human beings. Democracy is a system which is designed only by dictators to enforce the rule of a dictatorship over a people using a system like in the name of giving the people the right to go and decide their own future, when yet their future, their rights have never been defended by the very same human rights organization, which is at the level of the UN which is at the level of the United Nations. It only protects the rights of those that defend democracy and not the rights of those that want to uphold moral values and values that can advance the acceleration of humanity. Thank you very much.
Atame Bako, we are just a few more minutes to the end of the program. Now, before I come back to you to give your conclusive remarks and what you think is best for Libya at this point in time, let's get this comment from one of our favorite scholars. He has just dropped a comment, Mr. Shujarat, and he says Libyans should first of all consider that they are from one country and need to solve their own problems. They should also know that their motherland needs peace so as to enable their own people to live in peace. If they really want their country to move forward, they should forgive each other and let the past be the past in order to move ahead. They should know that the West or any regional groupings will not help them, but will help them if they have interest. They should know that we are laughing at them, and they should not remain the laughing stock of the world. They go to the mosque all the time to pray and still cannot solve their own problem. God is a God of peace and not a God of war, so they should turn to God. Africa should learn to solve their problems alone and not only depending on the third party. That's what Mr. Shujarat is saying as concerns today's topic. And now to wrap up the program, Mr. Atame Bako, like you have mentioned in the course of the program, democracy is not a thing for Africa. What then do you suggest is a model that works best for Africa? And linking to that, can you tell us what you think can be the way out for Libya at this current at this point in time? What does Libya need to do if they don't have to hold elections, or if they are not ready for elections? What does that country need to do to at least have peace reign, or for things to at least go back to the way they used to be?
Well, let me try to state some few factors very clearly. We are talking of Libya being rich in oil. So we are talking here about the standards of living and the destiny of a people based on what they have. This is very important. So when we want to make elections a priority and we fail to see the conflicts and the disunity and the war that democracy has brought to the Libyan people, then we'll be missing the point of what we should go in as a solution for Libya. What should be a solution for Libya should be unity, an all-inclusive dialogue where the Libyans can decide what is best for them. That's how you begin it. You don't begin it by suggesting in the name of democracy when you are actually imposing on the people. If you want the people to have rights to decide for themselves, then allow them to tell you what they have decided, instead of you telling them what they should do. That's not democracy. That's dictatorship. That's a dictatorial system, because you cannot have a double standard. You are telling them, oh, you have the right, freedom of expression, you have the right of belief, to self-belief, you have the right to decide your own future. Then allow them to decide what they want. That's what the Libyans are saying. They want to be able to lead themselves. Let them lead themselves. So let each man use what is going to work based on his own context. So if the Libyans, who are the majority, are saying they do not want dual nationality, like I said, what they did in Liberia. After they removed Charles Taylor in seat in Liberia, they brought in an African American who was the president. It was a lady who was the president of Liberia at that period. Whose interest did you think she was keeping? She was loyal back to where she was coming from, though she was an African. So it created a different conflict between the Africans at base and the Africans in the diaspora. This is not the kind of Africans who want them to come back in our own systems, which come to, like Obama, who goes there to keep the existing treaties and arrangements of the Europeans to exploit Africa. Allow the home-based Africans to decide for themselves if they want a dual nationality Libyans to be part of the process. Then they should be able to have judged the background of such individuals. So what should be good that can produce a government and a leader that can be in the interest of the Libyans will need to unite. That simply means all this opening of political parties will never bring Libyans to one opinion. We are talking here of rebuilding, not building Libya, rebuilding Libya from an invasion by criminals, pirates, and international armed robbers who left to destroy Libya. Today we are talking about rebuilding Libya. We cannot rebuild with divided and opposition parties. We can rebuild by having one architect. How does China survive? What system is China using today? We can copy it. What system was Mohammed Gaddafi using? We could copy it. What system was Sankara using? We could copy it. It's all about the interest of the people. What interest is America using? It's a very deceptive system, which is deceptive to its own citizens. That's why our people do not have rights in America. They are being killed on daily basis in America. But those are the people who come back to us and tell us, we seek your interest. We want you to have democracy because we want you to have freedom. Freedom. Which freedom? Any society that practices freedom is another quickest way to build Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why LGBT is coming to Africa. A man who has a vision cannot be free because he must be disciplined and narrows his vision, zooms his destination and know that this is my destination, because there are many roads. Not all roads will lead you back to Rome. You need to be able to be disciplined in order to pursue your goals. So to bring us a free world of freedom is like a busy road with cars coming from every angle. There will be accidents every day, conflicts because there are no traffic lights. The reason why they put traffic light is to maintain order. Why? Because it must be in the interest of everybody. And this is the kind of Africa we should be building. One which seeks the interest of the African people, because they deserve it. It's their lands, it's their natural resources, and those are their destinies and their property in order for them to develop their own life. We cannot trade all of this for the Europeans. Europe is not built looking good today because it's beautiful. It's because they are thieves. This is what they do for living. The Queen of England, she's a slave owner. That's what she does. They only make money by exploiting innocent people. That's where Africa is today. That's where Africa is today. So if we don't change this system of how will I call it, entertaining democracy, where poor Africans who don't even have what to eat anymore will wait a period of election just to go out and vote. People who are poor with very expensive elections in a poor area. We don't need elections. We need unity. We need our diaspora to come back. We need our human resources to return back to Africa. We don't need election. Africa needs unity. We need to come back together at home and decide a way forward for a new Africa. The rulership of the world can only be from Africa, and the West understands it, and that's why you realize that they are what they are, not because they are best or because they are blessed. It's because they have been deceiving the African people using captured slaves, diplomatic slaves, to repress 85% of the African people. Thank you very much.
Reverend Atem Ebakoh, thank you so much. Africans need to unite to take the continent forward and forget about democracy, because democracy is not a thing for Africa, according to Mr. Atem Ebakoh. Well, now tell of viewers, it is on that note that we draw the curtains on today's edition of Views on the Continent. I want to thank Mr. Atem Ebakoh for taking our time to be with us. Thank you so much for your input this day.
Thank you very much.
All right, it is on that note that we draw the curtains on this edition of the program. We want to thank all who took out time to participate. The solution for Africa's problems should only come from Africans themselves, and unity is the watchword. Africans need to unite to be able to solve their problems and stop depending on a third party or on foreign interference in solving their own issues. Another edition of this program comes up, of course, on Tuesday, 14 hours GMT, to take a look at another interesting issue on the continent and how we can seek solutions to these problems that are plaguing the continent. We thank our technicians, we thank the entire English desk for making the program a successful one. Do have a wonderful weekend in the company of more of our transmissions.
Afrique Média, le monde, c'est nous.